Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the NJ1ST podcast. My name is Ryan McDonald. I have another guest with me today, a candidate running for Congress in Congressional District 12, Darius Mayfield. He's taking on Bonnie Watson Coleman, and these counties in the district will be Mercer County, Middlesex County, and Somerset County with one union. But thank you so much for joining us, Darius.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan. Appreciate it.
I've gotten a lot of messages. A lot of people love you since 2022. Even before 2022,
Wow.
you've been active in the community. People really want to hear you speak, want you to be a leader. I get a lot of feedback from that. And just from me posting saying I'm going to have you on, so many messages came in. But I mentioned to
Wow.
you before we started recording that I saw your 2022 candidacy. And before we get into that, I'd love just to give your background just real quick if anybody doesn't know you.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me again. And I mean, that's great to hear that, people are messaging you and everything, man, because I rarely ever even think about any of that stuff. I'm just me. In fact, I was at a diner tour today and some guy came up to me in New Jersey with a cowboy hat and cowboy boots after I gave my speeches and everything. He was like, I wish I could remember the exact phrase he said because it was so unique and so funny. But basically, he was telling me that I had a lot of guts and I was very brave for coming into a place, especially like that in Bridgewater, and speaking about the policy that I was speaking about, and basically publicly, acceptingly saying that I am a Republican. And I looked at him and I said, listen, I'm from the freest generation to ever roam this earth. And, when I do these things that has nothing to do with bravery, we do what we want, when we want, how we want. And I'm just being me at the end of the day. So I don't think it's brave at all. I think we're just in that phase of our existence where you have a lot of people standing up that aren't afraid. And that's what we were taught to be, unafraid. We're Americans. We're free to be who we want, do what we want, say what we want at the end of the day. So that was kind of a funny thing that happened today. But I also think it kind of brings it into my story and, who I am. I am a kid that came from very humble beginnings, single mother. My father left when I was 3 years old, so it was just me, my mother, my little sister. I was born in New Brunswick, New Jersey. For those that have known New Brunswick and New Jersey in the late 80s and the early 90s, it was a very rough and tumble place. A lot of drugs, a lot of violence, a lot of crimes. We had prostitutes everywhere. I remember these visions distinctly when I was a kid. We had homeless people everywhere down there. And, luckily I had a very big family. My grandfather and grandmother had 15 kids. So my mom always had that type of help when it came to her brothers and things of that sort. So, later in life, I ended up moving with my uncle and them when I was a little out of hand for my mother. But before that, she actually had picked up everything she had when I was about 11, 12 years old and moved officially to South Brunswick, which is a very suburban neighborhood in the poorest part of South Brunswick, right next to the trailer parks. We were in these little apartments and the trailer parks were next to us. And, I grew up with all those being my friends. A lot of those people now, hit me up on Facebook and things and tell me how proud they are and how much they agree with what I'm saying, what I'm doing and things of that sort. So, that's very comforting and inspiring for me as well. But had she not done that, had she not moved us to that part of New Jersey, I might not be here speaking to you today. I definitely probably wouldn't have ran for office, congressional office, and probably wouldn't own the businesses and things I do today because, as we've seen, especially over the last few years, which has really been in our face, we have one side of the aisle, especially coming from that left-leaning side of the aisle that tends to tell, especially minorities, all the ways in which they won't be able to accomplish something, why they can't do something. And I was just talking to my cousin today, and I told her, I said, listen, me growing up, all my uncles, my cousins, they've repeatedly told me all the time what I could do and to make sure I went out there and traveled the world. And, I did what it is I wanted to do. And that stuck with me, which is why, I could say things like, this is not bravery to me. This is what was instilled inside of me. Right. And we want to see a lot more of that, especially in American kids, because they are so fortunate. They are so privileged. No matter if you're white, you're black, you're Spanish, to live in this country makes you a privileged person throughout the world. And the rest of the world seems to recognize that nowadays. It's everybody. It's us, here that don't really seem to appreciate that or understand that or recognize that. So from there, I ended up getting in a little bit of trouble. People know my story when I was a teenager, 17, 18 years old, taught me a good lesson. And once I went through all of that, I got into the car business at the age of 17. Within a matter of a year and a half or two, I ended up becoming the youngest sales manager ever in the top 20 auto group at that time, which was an open road auto group. About 6-7 years ago, I became the first Black general manager in that auto group when I started running Manhattan Volkswagen as their general manager. Since that time, as you guys know, I've ran for Congress in 2022. I started a foundation right after the 2022 election called the Darius Mayfield Foundation, which focuses on bringing quality education and school choice to underserved rural and urban neighborhoods throughout the United States of America. And I've also now started a couple of businesses. We have a book coming out soon called Our Time to Run, which will be available on Barnes & Noble, to be available on Amazon. It's basically an everyday guide to teach everyday Americans how to run up for office. You know, enough of the parties controlling people, enough of people not having the information. Because when I started this journey, I didn't have anybody teach me how to run for office. I dug in. I hired 2 people. There's 2 people that I've had staff consistently on my campaign. And that's my lawyer and my treasurer. That's it, right? Because I wanted to make sure the money was always right, so they can't come back and say I'm doing anything nefarious. And I wanted to make sure I followed all the rules and regulations to getting this run done. So, you know, I'm a very blessed person. I'm very blessed. I'm very fortunate. I recognize that. And hopefully what I'm hoping to do is continue to serve as a living and breathing example for others, to let them know no matter your circumstances, no matter where you come from, you can do it too.
That's an amazing story. And I implore anyone to go watch, I believe, Darwin Cooper's podcast, where you had your whole story, had a great long podcast, told your whole story. And I kind of found some new things about your upbringing as well that I didn't know about. And it's a great story, definitely. And I learned about you from the car salesman entrepreneurship. I saw that right away. And, you know, every person who's a Republican running in New Jersey is usually a lawyer, you know, but here's a person who made his own path. So that, and then you ran for Congress in 2022. That's what we'll speak on first. But then you're right. The foundation you made, I saw that. And now a book. I'd be happy to read that book. But
absolutely.
Let's go right into 2022 when you ran. To be honest, I thought you ran in 2020. You must have started earlier, which people have to do if they want to actually have a chance. But you knocked on 6,000 doors in Trenton. Myself, being someone who knocked on 8,000 for Donald Trump in Scranton, PA, I know the blood, sweat, and tears, the people shutting doors in your face. But you have to get out. You have to reach to the people. And I believe you even hit over 225,000 for your total team in 2022. Was that correct? So tell us a little bit about that experience, getting out there, door knocking, and the importance of all that.
Yeah, and before I get into that, I just want to touch on something you said, which I think is very important, because literally, it's almost like you got a microphone on me, because I was just having a conversation about this today, and you mentioned our Congress and our Senate being filled with lawyers. And when I was at one of the diner tours today, I was explaining to a gentleman that, you know, the Congress, specifically the House of Representatives, was initially created to be the closest chamber to the people. So when it first was created, we had farmers in there, cops, teachers, EMT workers, the regular everyday people. So it's important for me to show that. It's important for me to promote that and bring us back to that time, because there's a reason why we get these 4,000 page bills, and, they're so complicated to read because they're crafted by lawyers. And we wonder why, even though they told us it was going to do all this good for the people, 5-10 years down the road is doing nothing but causing turmoil and, really crushing the average everyday citizen. And that's because you have a lot of lawyers in there that are writing these languages that none of us really understand, making things so complicated. So it's very important, and I'm glad that we're starting this movement of getting regular people back in office. And again, that book, Our Time to Run, is going to teach everyday people how to do just that. In 2022, you're absolutely right. I actually started that campaign in January of 2021, right after the 2020 election. So I started that 2 years early. And the reason I did that is because, first of all, it's going to be my first time ever running for office. And anything that I do, I don't do, and excuse my French, half-ass, right? I go for it, and, I put my all into it, like you guys have all seen me do over the last few years. And, interesting fact, a lot of people don't realize this, and this is what really caused me to open my eyes as far as, what people really think, human behavior and all of that. Because I remember over that first year and a half, I would go on Twitter and people kept saying, because they saw me with, whether it's Trump, Kim Klacik, this one, that one, they're like, he's a grifter. He's a grifter. He's just in this for the money. So my first thought is, one, well, please show me the money that I'm grifting and I'm taking, because it hasn't been coming in and I haven't seen it. Two, people don't realize that in 2021, right before I announced my campaign, about a month earlier, 2 months earlier, I left my career in the car business. I was the general manager of Manhattan Volkswagen, making almost $250,000 a year. I had been making good money for quite some time. The car business is a great career path. If you're good at sales, you have the gift of gab, which I also think what makes me a strong negotiator and the right person to take this seat, because I can go to Congress and negotiate the deals that obviously Bonnie Watson Coleman is incapable of doing. And you guys will have a strong negotiator in the House of Representatives, because I don't lose. And ABCs, man, always be closing, and that's how I live my life. But when I announced, again, 2 months earlier, I had left my job, and I literally, and this is not me embellishing, I literally haven't taken a paycheck in over 2 years. The first paycheck I've taken in 2 years was just about a month ago. And that's from businesses that I started just about a year ago with some partners of mine. And it finally started coming to fruition. We got booked for our first jobs. And I was actually able to take a small paycheck for the first time in 2 years about a month ago. So for all those that think I'm a grifter and think I'm doing this for money, there you go. So you know the exact story. So you don't even have to, go there anymore. But as you said, yes, I knocked on over 25,000 doors. And the important thing for me about that was it was me, along with my team, knocking on doors. One of the first things I heard when I hired my initial fundraiser and I started hiring people for my ground game, the first thing they said was, especially the fundraisers, that we're surprised because candidates don't like to make these calls, nor do they. I was on early 5 days a week, at least an hour a day making calls. And again, I come from the car business. I'm used to making phone calls. I'm used to talking to people for long periods of time. So this is right up my alley. I'm just, these things are like second nature to me. But I was really proud to hear those things. And, they commended me for being on the phone myself, not letting other people do it for me, and also going out there, whether it was rain, sleet, or snow, or extreme heat, because I'm a sweater, man. I was out there in the heat for the first time ever walking, sweating through my T-shirts. I'm like, oh, this is horrible. But, you got to do what you got to do. So I knocked on over 6,000 doors in Trenton, New Jersey, which is a place, as you guys all probably know, is a very democratic black and brown area. I would say probably 90% of Trenton is black and brown and Democrat at the end of the day. And I think I was probably one of the first Republicans to ever actually have signs all over Trenton in people's yards and Democrat yards. Because, as I always tell Republicans, we have the issues, whether it's quality education or school choice, whether it's lower taxes, whether it's safer neighborhoods. And I know when it comes to safer neighborhoods, sometimes it doesn't seem like that's what people in those neighborhoods want, but that's not what you're actually seeing. You're seeing the politicians that represent them, say things publicly and advocate for legislation that the people in those towns don't necessarily agree with. And one of the interesting things that I found in a place like Trenton was the majority of those people that I talk to don't even vote anymore. And the reason why they don't vote is because they feel so disenfranchised. Mercer County has one of the lowest turnout rates in all of New Jersey. So these people don't even come out to vote. So politicians like Bonnie Watson Coleman, they can coalesce a few specific groups, specifically the church groups for Bonnie Watson Coleman, the LGBTQ community for somebody like a Bonnie Watson Coleman, and they can take that small minority and can keep winning for 30 years straight because they're able to coalesce those, communities. So I went out there and started talking to those forgotten people, kind of like the same thing Donald Trump did when they talk about him talking to the forgotten people, those that have been left behind. There's those that have been left behind in suburban neighborhoods and rural neighborhoods and urban neighborhoods. And it's time that we start hearing those people's voices, because that is the majority. When they talk about the silent majority, that's the majority. We just don't hear from them. And now that we're starting to hear from those people, I think you're going to start seeing some real change here in America. You're going to start seeing people like myself, where 10, 15 years ago, they would have laughed and thought somebody like myself could never be elected. But I think the more people hear my policies, the more people see what I'm about, more people see the work that I'm putting in. They understand that I'm not an extremist. I'm a regular guy from the hood that grew up in a time, and I was saying this in our diner tours the last few days, where when I was growing up in high school, middle school, I had black friends, white friends, Spanish friends, Muslim friends, Jewish friends, Catholic friends. I had all types of friends, right? I lived in Highland Park, New Jersey, which is very diverse. I lived in South Brunswick. Like, we didn't have to worry about a lot of these things, but yet, and I told the gentleman I actually spoke to, he was at the diner tour yesterday in East Brunswick, the president of Rutgers University. That
Yeah.
was an interesting conversation.
Just
Bro.
showed up out of nowhere, huh?
Bro, I mean, listen, I don't even know if I should say. I don't want to be disrespectful or anything, but let's just say this: I held my own, and I think they had a much different perspective by the time I walked away from that table, because nobody's gonna get over on me. You're not gonna be able to just implant stuff in my head and sensationalize things and say things and have me sit there and just believe it and come to your side and be in agreement with you. This is America. We're allowed to have different views. In fact, I encourage it. If we don't have different views, something's wrong, because this probably is going to be more symptomatic of China than it is the actual United States of America the day that happened. So I welcome dissenting views. And when I went and knocked on 6,000 doors in Trenton, I also knocked on 2,000 doors in Plainfield, which people don't realize is that's even tougher area than Trenton to break hold. That was actually the smallest increase that I had. In 2022, I had an increase in Middlesex County for Republicans of 11 points. In Somerset, I had an increase of 7 points. And this is all from 2020. In Mercer County, I had an increase of about 3 points. And in Union County, that one town in Plainfield, had an increase of about 1 point. So we increased every county. But as you can see, Union County, where Plainfield is, that's a much harder nut to crack. But this time around, we're going to focus on some different things and make sure we get the job done. So I'm excited. I'm an avid campaigner. Again, we're on a diner tour right now. We just did 6 diners in 3 days. We have another 6 diners in 3 days coming up next weekend. And then we'll also be starting a church tour soon. We're going to be going around to all the churches in District 12. We're going to be doing a lot of things that's really going to shake up the game and keep Bonnie Watson Coleman on her toes.
Good. That's definitely what I like to hear. And thank you for outlining your whole 2022 experience. I really hope that the NJGOP, with the funding that they do have, that they give some to people and candidates like you so they can hire additional door knockers. It doesn't really take that much to get a high schooler or a college kid out there. The minimum wage is $15 an hour. You can get a high schooler or college kid to do it. So I really hope that they give you guys some funding this year to do that. But I won't hold my breath, and we'll go on to the next question. Yeah, go on.
No, I will say, so one of the interesting things about me, and I pride myself on this, again, I come from the business world, which means I know how to handle myself in a multitude of different environments. Kind of like Jay-Z said, he said, I'll show you how to move in a room full of vultures, right? I come from the car business. It's a tough business, from billion-dollar CEOs that I know to general managers to the average, customer that walks through the door. And so for me to take that and translate it into my political experience, as you know, I came in with the grassroots movement. I didn't know anybody in the NJGOP. I wasn't necessarily trying to, find anybody in the NJGOP. I just knew that I wanted to get politically involved after the 2016 election. So I started getting involved on a grassroots level. Now, once I announced my campaign, and once I started showing them how dedicated of a campaigner I am and things of that sort, I did start to gain the support of the NJGOP. So specifically, those at the top have donated to my campaign. And towards the middle to the end of my campaign, they actually started paying people to walk with my literature. So Somerset County, they're huge for that. They passed out hundreds, if not thousands, of flyers for me. Middlesex County is great with that. So it's really, and again, you'll see a lot of this in my book. It's really about ingratiating yourself, but it's also about how you carry yourself and the things that you do, in those moments. So I am blessed and I am honored to really be a soldier for we the people and the grassroots movement, because I'll always be that, and that's going to never change. But also to have gained the respect of a lot of people within the NJGOP, where I'm able to do that but still not compromise who I am, because I never have. I'm the same person, I speak the same way, and that's going to never change.
Yeah, I've noticed that someone like you has gained more of a liking from the NJGOP than someone like me, probably because of the way you hold yourself, the way you speak, you're not outlandish. And I do see that and come across. It's good that they definitely help you. The only reason I brought that up was because last year there was financial reports, and I thought it could have been used better. But if they're helping you, I think that's a great use of the money. So
and you're probably right. Two things can be right at once. So I get it and I understand.
And something that I've kept hearing you talk about, and this is probably your approach, is the get on TV. We have to get people on national TV. And my first thought is, I am now in the media world a little bit, at least have my foot in it. And I'm noticing the news in the tri-state area. That's how we talk about ourselves. Philadelphia, New York, New Jersey. Not the rest of the country isn't even getting that news. It's just us. So I
Yeah.
agree. And it's national news. That's considered national news. It's coming from New York, but it's only traveling to like Tennessee or Florida, you know,
Yeah.
East Coast stuff, I guess. So I guess that's probably what you mean by get on TV. It really is that important. Or,
Yeah. I mean, getting on TV, you know, the name of the game, one of the things I'm learning is really name recognition. You know, even if you outwork your opponent, like I did last time around, Bonnie Watson Coleman doesn't campaign at all, right? She did like 3 or 4 events last time. I mean, she's not out there campaigning. And she knows that, you know, she has that name recognition right now. But the interesting thing is, of all the Democrats holding office in this state right now, as far as congressmen and congresswomen, Bonnie Watson Coleman has the least name recognition. Right. She also raises the least amount of money. She was the only Democrat every year that raises less than $1 million. I think last time she raised like $800,000, $900,000, when everybody else is raising $2 million, $5 million, $7 million. So she doesn't raise a lot. She hasn't had a serious challenger in some time, or at least she's felt that way. So she's gotten very comfortable in what she's doing. But we also understand that this market, specifically New Jersey and the tri-state area, like you said, is the most expensive TV market in the entire country. It takes a lot of money to get on TV. But once you're on TV, that's literally the quickest way you can expand your name recognition throughout the district. So my goal is to raise enough money that by the time September, and start in the middle to late September, through September, October, we're going to start in October. Late September through late September, October, and November, the beginning of November for the election, we can run commercials all throughout and just flood the airways with commercials. And we're going to figure out a strategic way to do that. One of the good things for me coming from the car business, I used to plan, you know, TV rollouts all the time for dealership commercials and things of that sort. So I have some connections in the industry. I know there are some more affordable ways to do things, to get on things like ESPN, Fox, you know, all those big stations where people can really start hearing my message, seeing who I am, because we understand that Bonnie Watson Coleman and people like her like to play race politics, right? Well, one of the interesting things when I went to Trenton and Plainfield, a lot of people were happy and surprised that I was a black man, you know, running for office. So I think people seeing my face, especially on TV, and now having that direct contrast along with the messaging can definitely put us in serious contention to go ahead and take this seat.
That's nice. Nicely said. And I have the hunch that the social media, millions of views that people are getting on social media, probably people like myself, not high propensity voters. You know, I vote in very selective elections when people are watching the TV, late night news or something, probably vote every single election, and that's how they get it. I think you got that. And if there's anything else you want to say on that, otherwise we'll go to the next questions.
Yeah, I mean, you know, again, voter turnout is low here, and, you know, you're absolutely right, especially when it comes to social media. One of the reasons why, you know, some people boast about having 100,000 followers, you know, 50, 30,000 followers on social media when they're running for office. But, you know, for me, that's not important, because the overwhelming majority of those people on your social media are not able to vote for you. And most of them won't even donate to you. So to me, that doesn't really mean much. My social media is completely and always will be completely organic. Never bought followers or done anything like that to boost it up. The 4,500 that I have on, you know, IG, the 7,000 I have on Twitter, those are all organic followers that have just built up over the years from me doing what I do and putting out the material that I put out. So I'm actually very proud of that and very humbled by that. And one tidbit for those, you know, running for office, social media is great. And once you have those followers, you definitely want to put some money into that to market to them as you can. But that is nowhere near the most important thing, because the overwhelming, probably 80 to 90% of the people on your social media either cannot or will not vote for you.
And that might have been the answer to this question, but if you had any other thoughts, how do we best approach getting voters to the polls, whether it be social media or it's mostly in person, you know, like we just on social media, doesn't mean you're going to go to the poll that day, doesn't mean you're going to vote by mail, doesn't mean you're going to vote by early. So this is a question from one of the Twitter followers. How do you best approach getting voters to the polls?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways, and this is one thing that I know especially my base in the party, the hard right conservatives weren't too keen on in the beginning, but I think a lot of people are warming up to it. We have to play the game that Democrats play right now in a lot of respects. That means early voting. That means mail-in voting. You know how many older Republicans don't even just, go to the polls and vote anymore, or how many people feel disenfranchised? If we're approaching these people and we're giving them an easier way to vote, just like Democrats do, right? They're just ballot harvesting and gathering these ballots, having people sign them up and dropping them off. We need to legally ballot harvest just like Democrats do. We need to get as many people, independents and Republicans, voting by mail-in ballot that were never going to make it to the precincts in the first place. And we need to get people involved in early voting. Now, it's funny. People in the beginning, when Governor Murphy switched it out and gave us these 10 days of early voting, whatever the case is, a lot of people on the right, immediately went to, they're just doing that to cheat. No. That's not why they did that. I mean, and obviously we know there's some nefarious things that happened with them, but the reason why he did early voting is because it gave him more time to get people to the polls. Right? So you don't just have to go on one day. You can now literally schedule people throughout the course of a week and a half to eventually make it to the polls. We have to start understanding these things and playing the same games as them. And then once we win, I mean, everybody knows where I stand. I believe we should make voting a national holiday. It should be one day to vote. I think we should get rid of mail-in balloting only for those serving in our military or, the elderly that are just completely incapable of actually making it to the polls. We also need voter ID. We're tired of hearing that, black people can't afford or don't know how to get, driver's license. Well, let me just tell you, my grandmother and grandfather had 15 kids. I got 60, 70 something first cousins, and every single one of them has some type of ID. All right. And we do understand, let's say, in some of those deep rural, really deep southern places, maybe there's, some people that can't make it because there's no modes of transportation and things like that, or they really just can't afford something. Well, especially as Republicans, we should be advocating to make sure we'll pay for them to get their IDs in those states, so they have those IDs so they can go there. It's of low cost to us. We will make sure, and that just crushes their complete argument. But instead, we're arguing in ways that are really counterproductive to us getting our point across and making people come over to our side. And that's what I mean when I say you'll have a strong negotiator in the House of Representatives that can really eloquently make these arguments to where people understand. And it's just going to continue to bring droves and droves of people over to our side. But, other than that, obviously, to get people to vote, we need to be active. We need to be out there. One thing I really want to focus on this time is having town halls. We need to make it fun, for people, for especially the younger generation. I was telling one of the guys that one of the chairs of one of the clubs out here, the president of the club, and, I told him in order to get people, more people to these events, you got to reach out to those young couples. Do things that, are events that they can involve their kids in, different things like that. That's going to bring the families in. That's going to bring more young people in. And once you have them there, we know a lot of these people agree with a lot of our policies because it happens. Anybody you talk to right now, all I got to say is, I know you're not happy with what's going on right now. 99.9% of people are like, nah, whether they're Democrat, Republican. So people are there. They're just waiting for us to bring them in intelligently. It's a different time when you have aldermen in Chicago going on public television and saying, and literally this was her words verbatim, was if you are a Republican or if you are an independent, right now is your time to come to Chicago and run for office. When you have people in Chicago saying that, people are telling you, man, it's here. So we have to start reading the tea leaves and understanding these things, not being, extreme left or right in what we decide to do, but just tackling this head on, being sensible in our approach and just really speaking to the issues because we have the issues.
Nice. Yeah, the vote by mail, early voting, this whole thing, I've come around on it. I remember pushing back on it, just like all the other right-wingers, like you said. And Bob Auth, Assemblyman Bob Auth, has been going up and down the state trying to advocate for people to vote by mail. And I applaud him for that now. I applaud all you guys now for doing that because you're right that you have to play the game if you want to win. If you want to even have a chance at it, you have to do exactly what they're doing in regards to ballot harvesting and all that. And and I believe you that there are probably plenty of independents or Republicans that are like, I used to go to the voting booth every day on election day, every day. But now, what's the point? If Republicans go to them and show them that you're not giving up, like you said, I'll take your ballot, do the same thing that the Democrats are doing. I'll take your ballot, you sign it, and you can vote early. We can put it in the ballot box. I'll do it for you, sort of thing. However many you can. I don't know. The law is looking at that first. But,
legally, whatever you can do legally.
just showing them that you're not giving up, and maybe they'll be like, okay, yep, I'll fill it out. Here you go, sort of thing. So I agree. That's good words of wisdom there. And
yeah, man.
another question.
Sure.
I remember watching the Darwin Cooper podcast you had, and you outlined your policy positions that you had very meticulously outlined: education, energy, and immigration. Basically, there might have been a couple more there, but a question from the viewers: what do you feel is the most pressing issue in New Jersey today?
Yeah, I can tell you this. A year and a half ago, my answer probably would have been different. I probably would have been more in line with education, taxes, because we know those are, big things in New Jersey, especially the tax problem with us being the highest tax state in the country with the highest increases pretty much year over year, especially with everything, being rolled into our property taxes and our property taxes being absorbed. It's just wild in New Jersey, and which is why so many people are fleeing. But I'll honestly say right now, not just for New Jersey, but the entire country, it's really illegal immigration. And the mass migration of illegal immigrants. I'll let you know. And first, I'll just speak specifically to New Jersey. I know when people in New Jersey maybe think right now, they're thinking, some people, it hasn't really touched us that much, and it's not as bad as somewhere, let's say, like New York. Well, the problem is that may be correct in some senses, but it's getting there. And then we've had a problem in the past, especially in this country, of letting things happen and trying to fix them once they happen. Right now in New Jersey, we have a chance to stop this in its track and make sure it doesn't get here, because I can tell you, once it's here, once it's happening like it is in New York, it's going to be very hard to stop. Like, this is not just like, we can put a Republican in office and we snap our fingers and all these people disappear, or all the crime stops, and, all the money stops going to illegal. No, we have over 10 million, which that's all only what they're reporting. That doesn't include the gotaways, and that doesn't include the ones they're not telling us about, but over 10 million people in the course of 3.5 short years that have illegally crossed our border, that this administration has essentially let into the country. And not only have they let them into the country, and this is not conspiracy theories, I've been doing a lot of work on this. I've been to the border 4 times. I've been to Peru, which I'll talk about in a minute. They are literally taking them and flying them under in the cloak of night to different states, and they have been for the last 3 years, and just dropping them off in states. We started hearing reports here in New Jersey recently, and we saw the mayor talk about this of New York, that they are now putting those people on the NJ Transit to ship them up to New York. But we know what's happening. A lot of those people are getting off in between, in Jersey, in New Jersey's different cities, in between on those different stops. And now they're just gone. Right? They're now embedded into society. We're a very diverse, we're actually the most diverse state in the country anyway. So a lot of times if they go to the right towns, it's going to be really hard to kind of see who's here illegally, who's not here illegally, because they can blend right into these communities, right? So it's not like you can just look at somebody and know they're a legal immigrant, especially when it comes to, us being such a diverse country, and them being able to blend in communities where there might be a lot of people that come from the same countries as them that have migrated here legally. So this is a real problem. And I'll tell you this, I went to Peru. Go ahead.
I was going to say, before you go into the Peru and your border talk, because I definitely want to hear about that, and I have one question for it. But in 2019, I saw the same thing with the busing of Greyhound bus, a private bus like that, and they came all the way from the border all the way to our state, Washington, D.C. and New York. It's been happening for a while, and like you said, we don't deal with the problem until it's actually a problem. I'm just a regular guy, just like you. I work in the warehouse industry. I work in the food business industry. I've worked with people who told me they came here illegally, and then they apply for the proper requirements, the proper paperwork while they're in the country. And then that makes me think, okay, well, you became a citizen, you became legal while you were illegal. That's when the problem is at your doorstep. What do you do then? Do you deport? Do you keep them because they're legal? So I agree that 100%, but I would love to hear about your trip to the border and also Peru. Now, were you in Peru when they were having that whole civil unrest? They had a very political turmoil themselves. Were you there during that time?
Not really. There were a couple of protests going on. That was more about the
scary
community. Yeah, I was there. I actually walked past that. I think in some of the videos that I put up, you'll see me walking behind a gate when thousands of people were outside in front of the presidential, quarters and protesting. But that was more about like special needs, and things of that sort. But yeah, and it really sucks because basically, and you've seen this over and over again, what happened is We won't deal with the problem now of illegal immigration. You get a president in there, let's say 4 years, 8 years from now, and then they want to start bringing up the issue of possibly deporting people again. But then you have them saying, well, they've been in the country for 10 years now. We can't do that. But if we tackle the problem now, we wouldn't have to worry about that. So it's just a game of just pushing it along. And this is what they do. This is what establishment, older, seasoned politicians that have been in there for 20, 30, 40, 50 years that have lost all, sight of reality and what the average American goes through. This is what they push, and this is the game that they keep playing. So, we're shooting a documentary right now, and I'm hoping for this documentary to come out before the November 5th election. I'd like to actually get it all done, rent out a movie theater, do a premiere, and bring everybody, people like yourselves, everybody together to really see this. And, I can't, knock on wood, we can make this happen, but, it's I have a lot of things going on right now. I actually just got a lot of the footage in the hands of our editors, so I know they're working on some stuff now. We'll probably have to shoot more, so hopefully it all comes together. But one of the places we shot we went to Lima, Peru, in Peru. And, we went out there. We met with congresswomen and congressmen. So we met with them out there, the ones specifically that work on human trafficking, that work on irregular adoptions, which is a really big problem that actually Americans really partake in a lot, where you have government officials basically snatching people's kids and putting them through a fraudulent adoption system, and they end up over here in America. Americans, they said, were actually the number one, not suppliers, but the number one receivers of these illegal adoptions. We also know that, America has the most basically human trafficking going on of any country in the world right now. So, it's not all blue skies over here. We got a lot of work to do, man. A lot of things that have been normalized through, some of these erratic and, crazy liberal policies in this country, where they're trying to normalize things like pedophilia, over-sexualized curriculum in our schools and things of that sort. And this is not conspiracy theory. So I know there's going to be some people that just hear that and are like, see, we told you he was crazy. No, just go read your own people's words. See some of the bills that they're passing in places like California. See everybody that's getting exposed in Hollywood right now. It's all happening. And I really do think, and I think this has a lot to do with the work that we've all done. I think this is the decade, especially the year of exposure. A lot of people are being exposed right now, from the Diddy's to the Weinsteins to some of our politicians. A lot of people are being exposed. This is just the beginning. So I've always been looking forward to this, and I'm looking forward to us continuing this same sentiment going forward, where we can really put ourselves back on track. But we went to Lima, Peru, and we were filming. We got to meet with congressmen and women. We went to 2:00 in the morning. So I think you know this about me. I'm the type of guy that goes to the border or goes to somewhere like Peru where I've never been, and pulls up in a van at 2:00 in the morning and starts talking to people in the street. So there's like a whole red light district down there where there's nothing but all these prostitutes. Started jumping out the van to the point where our security had to tell one of the ladies, he was like, he can't do that. It's not safe. So he came over and said something to me. It's not safe. I said, listen, you're here with them. I didn't hire you. Don't worry about me. I'm good. This is what I do. So just let me do what I do. So we're hopping out of the vans, talking to prostitutes, talking to their pimps, talking to all types of people. And one of the groups, I wasn't with them this day, but they actually had a gun pulled on them, or flashed at them at least. I wasn't with them that day. I was back at the hotel, but it was kind of wild. But anyway, the interesting thing that happened when we were there is, whether I was talking to the congressmen and women or talking to regular everyday people, one thing was clear, and they all said the same thing. They are having violence, a drug epidemic, violence and human trafficking like they have never seen in their country before. And the overwhelming majority of that comes from illegal Venezuelan immigrants that have now come over into their country from Venezuela under the Maduro regime, who we know he's done a lot of crazy and bad things, to the point where there are people who are being starved and they were eating other humans' flesh and things of that sort. They also, one person, a cabbie, told me about how a lot of Chinese dissidents are coming over there and Taiwanese, and they're actually shutting up shop, and they're now have whole gangs that are operating out there. Like, it was crazy. When we were walking the streets when we first got there, we saw the spotters in the towers above us. They started pointing them out. Look, they're watching you. They're sending messages. It was quite crazy. I was in the thick of it. But the interesting thing was, when we got back about 3 weeks later, I went back to the U.S. border, and I was in not El Paso, not McAllen.
Eagle Pass.
It'll come to me. There you go. Thank you. I was in Eagle Pass, Texas, which is a very big problem right now. And if you look at one of the videos on my IG, you'll see me talking in the camera, and then all of a sudden you see a group of hundreds of people just start walking past me. 90% of these people in that group were military-aged Venezuelan men. And to make that connection, to see that clear distinction, just lets you know everything that you need to know of where this thing is going and why we're seeing some of the problems that we're seeing. You know, my house got robbed last year. 4 or 5 individuals came into my house while I was laying next to a window 5 o'clock in the morning and came in and stole a car. You know, thank God, you know, had me woke, because I'm usually a deep sleeper, but for some reason I saw or heard something and looked up and saw flashlights outside the window. So I calmly walked upstairs, told my girl to call the cops, and I started to do whatever I started to do. I won't go into that, but you know, getting ready for whatever it was. And, you know, to have that happen, once that happened to me, I started kind of looking more into what was going on. Were there other robberies happening? Don't you know, in New Jersey, we have a spike in car thefts. We have a spike in people breaking into homes, like the highest numbers, you know, that we've ever seen. And then I started reading deeper, and they started talking about how all over the country right now, there's organized, specifically Peruvian and South American gangs targeting homes all across this country right now. So once I looked that up and started seeing that, now I'm going to Peru. Now I experience it myself. Now I'm going to the border and seeing all these Venezuelans coming. It's like you start to connect the dots and understand, like, listen, we're not trying to cast a shadow over an entire group of people, but we also want to identify the problem directly and address that problem directly. And I'm telling you guys directly what is happening. A large quantity of the violence that's going up, that the home invasions that are happening, that the car thefts are having, are coming from illegal migrant gangs that are in this country right now. The cops know all about it. They are casing people's houses. They are watching for when they leave. And now they've taken it a step further, where they're entering people's homes when they're actually there to take their cars and take different things. Just in East Brunswick, in the last 2 weeks, we've had 3 more homes invaded while people weren't there. I know about just in East Brunswick, and this is East Brunswick, New Jersey, which is one of the most suburban towns in the state of New Jersey, that you never expect anything like this to happen. I mean, just in the last 6 months to a year, I know about at least 10 different home invasions that have taken place right here in East Brunswick. So it's a serious problem. It's a serious, serious problem. And unfortunately, I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets any better. But we can't give up the fight. This is our country, and we have to make sure we keep standing up for it, and we let these people know that it won't be tolerated. And you have a new generation and a new crop of people that are going to address this head on. We're gonna address it viciously.
Thank you for saying all of that. I think I just saw a Twitter post or X post showing Edison, New Jersey, a robbery in broad daylight, a house robbery.
Bugatti.
And I do remember actually you posting, it was maybe a year or 2 ago, when you had your home invasion as well. I couldn't believe, I thought it was a joke. I was like, wait, are you serious? And so, yeah, that's very scary. That's very good. Very thankful that nothing bad happened. But the most pressing issue being immigration, a lot of people would agree with you, definitely. One with the newest videos we're seeing at the border of them getting a little rambunctious, wanting to come in, you know, not following the laws and getting a little violent, you would say, definitely. But also, like you said, with the human trafficking, of course. And I watch on YouTube. It's gotten so bad and for so long that you can just watch YouTubers who take the ultimate task, and of course they want views, right? But they walk across the Darien Gap with these migrants, and they show that the train, you know, everybody gets on top of a train, as Americans would maybe remember India looks like. You know, all these people get on top of trains. That's how Mexico looks. They're all getting on top of the trains, and as they're coming by these stops in Mexico, Mexicans are throwing food and water to them. Why? Because they're starving on their way up, and you see bodies in the Darien Gap just lying there because people don't prepare. They just go. They think, you know, they are helpless, I guess. So there's definitely a humanitarian side of that I implore people to watch. But also, it sounds like I'm learning more and more about the Venezuela part of this whole thing. And they are the Marxist, the communist out of all of the South and Latin American countries, I would say, maybe Brazil there too. But they kind of dubbed Venezuela with Maduro, like you're saying, after Chavez. But they are doing the communist playbook of letting out their criminals in jail. So that's, I guess, a historical playbook for communists to let out their criminals, you know, exile them, get them to the capitalist countries. And I'm finding that, just like you said in Peru, they're going even to their own brother countries, and committing crimes and cartels and stuff like that, but as well as Colombia. So I guess like during the Pablo Escobar years, it was Colombia that had all the crime and it was leaking over to Venezuela. Venezuela was very rich in the 2000s and it just flipped.
Yeah.
Now all Venezuelans are going over to Colombia because they're poor and starving. So it's very interesting politics in the geopolitical world there. It's immigration is probably the biggest issue because it's going to be changing America and changing culture, changing people. Definitely. If anything else on that before I ask you a last question.
Yeah, and I think you brought up an important point, especially as Republicans, we need to speak to the humanitarian issue that this creates, because it seems like the left really doesn't care about it and doesn't care to speak about it. But, we do understand that a lot of people that are coming over, we understand that they are fleeing dire conditions. So it's also incumbent upon the next president, the next House of Representatives, to start putting the pressure, just like Donald Trump started doing in his administration, on these other countries, to start working with them to fix some of their problems so people don't feel like they have to make this trek. When I went to the border the second or third time, I met a woman that had just birthed a baby 21 days before she walked across our border and came up here from Nicaragua. These people traveled from there, had a baby 21 days before that, and still passed the border. Like, it's the most extreme of the most extreme things that are happening on these journeys. And you're absolutely right. I mean, they try to say we're conspiracy theorists, and they tried to say Donald Trump is racist when he said they're not sending their best. This is what he meant when he said some of these people are racist, some of these people are violent, because he understands history. And if history shows you anything, we already know that Cuba did this once when they sent over 300 prisoners to the United States of America. And this is a commonly known fact. So when somebody, especially a U.S. president, starts to make that same distinction in what we see happening now, there's nothing racist about it. It's actually just the reality of the situation. But Democrats like to play emotional, race-baiting politics so much that that's their only go-to. And the problem for them is you had somebody like a Donald Trump that no matter what you threw at him was just so unafraid and so brave in what he did as far as continuing to expose these things, and not only expose them, but speak about them in a way that once they actually started to happen, people understood that this guy wasn't just being brash or talking junk. He was actually giving us the raw, unfiltered truth. And people are saying that right now. So when Donald Trump said, with Joe Biden in here opening up the border, you're going to see more crime, more violence. Well, guess what we're seeing all over America? More crime, more violence. When Donald Trump said they were going to come in and destroy the gas and oil industry, and now we're going to raise your price on everything. Well, guess what we're seeing? The highest inflation ever. We're going to the supermarket now, and if you buy 3 or 4 things, it's like every time you buy 3 or 4 things, your bill is $100. Like, people are tired and sick of these things, and now we have a clear distinction. So Democrats can't just come in and say, "Oh, hey, well, this guy's a racist and this policy doesn't work." Well, then show me the distinction of when he had that policy in place and now the policy you have, and show me how it's better. They can't, right? So they're going to continue to play identity politics. They're going to continue to try to scare people. My cousin told me today, one of my little cousins who's an avid Democrat and voted for Joe Biden and everything, but they were really considering voting for Donald Trump this time. So she told me today, I literally was with her today, and she goes, she said, "I'm still voting for Donald Trump, but just so you know, at work the other day, they pulled my daughters into a meeting, and they're a union-based job, and they told them that Donald Trump is going to eliminate unions in this country." So they told him. So now, so these are impressionable kids, right? So he's only like 25, 26-year-old. So they know how to play the game, Democrats. They're going to say this, and now that's all that's on their mind, right? So they think that's going to affect them. And I said to her, well, all I would have simply asked him is, one, well, why didn't he do that in his first term? Right? True. Simple logic. Then they probably wouldn't have been able to answer that. And then I would have asked them, well, you do know that Donald Trump comes from New York City, and he's explained multiple times over and over again how he had to work with unions continuously throughout his career. Like, these are common sense things that if you just pay a little bit of attention or you put any effort into it, you'd understand and know. But unfortunately, Democrats bank on a low information voter base that won't a lot of times do this extra homework and just take what they're saying as the gospel. And I'm here to shut that down and let people know you don't have to do that anymore. There's another way, and we're going to start living in reality so we can really fix these things.
Nice, and thank you for bringing up Donald Trump there and his history. I'm feeling ignorant about that Cuba thing. Yeah, they probably sent over criminals and all that. I got to look that back up. I was talking.
No, they literally emptied an entire prison and sent them over here.
I got to look that up. That's probably all over Wikipedia and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
It's probably common knowledge to many people.
Yeah.
So we'll go with our last question of the night.
Sure.
And we won't talk about the New Jersey representatives, but we have Tom Kean Jr., Chris Smith, Jeff Van Drew. I'd say they're staggered in the way of which they support which the way that they vote. But I would love to hear from you. Who is over these years, your favorite congressman, someone you look up to, or if you were elected, you'd be excited to work with?
Well, I've actually given the same answer over and over every time I've been asked this question, but it has changed a little bit. So I will still say it is still the same answer. My favorite congressman has been Jim Jordan. I just think he's a fighter. He's my style. I know he's an ex-wrestler, and he's one of the first people we came in under that initial, MAGA movement that we've seen just go at their necks and just beat them down with truth and reality. At the end of the day, because these people aren't saying anything crazy. They're just giving it to you reality. But people on the other side and, career politicians are so used to playing political games that when you hit them with reality, their default is just to start lying and just go to, everything that's nonsensical where they try to confuse people. And then people that were already on their side start looking at the other side like, oh, yeah, they're just liars, whatever the case. And when it's really them that are playing political games and putting your life in danger. But I will say a rising star right now and somebody that I am really looking forward to working with. And I actually know him quite well. I've met him a few times. And hopefully we'll get his endorsement this time around as well, is Byron Donalds.
Nice.
I often tell people, man, like if you asked me a month ago who I thought Trump was going to pick at his VP, I thought it was going to be. And I think it's still a good chance of it being a Tim Scott. Not because Tim Scott is the best politician, but I think Donald Trump is a smart enough man, just like he did in the first time, where he's going to pick somebody that's already in the system. He's going to pick somebody that's already elected to help him with that legislative side of things, right? And this time, I think he wants to make sure it's somebody that's going to be a bit more loyal than somebody like a Mike Pence. But I think he's probably most likely going to pick somebody that's already an elected official. Having a senator on your side is great, especially if we are in the majority in the Senate. But I would say if Donald Trump really, if his motive, and again, we don't want to pick anybody on this color, their skin, things that we want to pick people that are fit for the job, right? But if he is thinking about, because he's already said he also wants to coalesce a base and bring more people in. He's thinking about somebody like a black politician because he wants to continue to reach out to that community and bring them in. Right. I think Byron Donalds is the guy. Byron Donalds, he's a guy like me that is going to give it to you straight, give it to you raw. Tim Scott, especially over the last month or so after he dropped out, and I think he felt like he could be in the running for a VP spot. I think he's done a little bit of, they're going to hate me for using this word, but I think he's done a little bit of cooning. he's been dancing on stage, talking like a pro wrestler. I'm like, bro, what are you doing, man? That's just embarrassing. You don't have to do that, because before he started doing that, he was a very elegant man. I love what he did on The View. When he went on The View, he smacked them around on The View, and The View is one of the toughest places to be. I think those ladies on there are absolutely apparent and can be so disgusting sometimes in the way they manipulate people, the way they talk about people, the language that they use and the way that they are. It's really just disturbing. So I can't wait to be an elected official and go on that show so I can show Tim Scott how it's done. But I think, ever since that time, just to kind of see how he's acting, it's been a little bit off-putting for me. But I do know Donald Trump is very close to Byron Donalds. And I think when Byron Donalds, he's like Trump. He's not afraid to go anywhere. So he's on CNN, he's on The View, he's on Fox News. And every time he goes there, I like the fact that he gets it right. Sometimes as Republicans, over the years, over the decades, one of the things that I think have off-put people sometimes is, it's like when you get on that big stage, especially if it's a stage that's not your stage, so it's the left stage on the CNN or MSNBC, sometimes Republicans, I don't know, you got me wanting to curse on this thing, but sometimes they S the bed, if you know what I mean, right? Mm-hmm. They don't come off as intellectual or as strong as they would if you see them on Fox News or somewhere else. We can't be like that. Whether I'm in front of an independent group, a Democratic group, a Republican group, I'm the same me all the time. You're getting what you see is what you get. I'm not going to change my answers or change this because I'm sitting in front of a certain group of people. And I like Byron Donald because he's the same way, and he really smacks him down when he's on places like CNN and stuff like that. And that's what Republicans need, because throughout all these years, the biggest problem that Republicans have had has been the messaging and the messengers that we have put up. Because you have to be able to, especially right now, not only show some type of empathy, but also stand strong in your convictions and be able to properly articulate yourself in a way that's not divisive and can bring people in rather than pushing people away at the end of the day. And I think the more and more as we have politicians that are able to do that, you're going to see Republicans take over in places that you've never seen them before. And we're really, really going to have the chance to make America great again. I truly believe that.
Dude, that sounds awesome. That's awesome. Thank you for all that. All those great words that you gave us and your opinion on your favorite congressman, Jim Jordan. I like him. Definitely. Tim Scott, I really don't even know much about him. And
yeah, none of us do.
for Byron Donald, I heard him just like everybody else heard him when he got a name to fame because it was the House Speaker race, and his name was actually floating there a little bit after we really couldn't find anybody else. He's young, youth. We just need youth. I just need somebody who's youthful to be more active, and he is strong. He doesn't back down, like you said. I noticed that right away. So someone who's youthful like that, and also one other gentleman, Mark Robinson. I believe he's running for the governor of
North Carolina.
Yeah, that dude. I mean, he's got to be young too. He's not old, but he's good.
He's a beast. He's a beast. The only thing I'll say about him, sometimes this is what I'm talking about. Sometimes he goes a little like, come on, bro. Sometimes there's just certain things that you don't need to say. Right. And when you
after November.
Yeah. And it honestly puts us further back than moves us ahead sometimes. Right. And I think people like myself and Byron Donalds, we know how to say the same things, but put it in a way where, especially when we're talking to like white liberals, they come to us with certain things. They can't say certain things. They can't feel certain ways because we're going to make them look stupid if they try to approach us that way. Like, I live this life. I come from the hood. I grew up with a single mother and a little sister. I got chased with knives in school. I got a gun pulled on me before. Did you? Right? So we can talk to them like that in ways where it's like, it's not going to, because sometimes you have to protect the feelings of especially people on the left. And I know we hate to say that, sometimes, but if you're trying to win elections and you're trying to ingratiate people and bring them over, sometimes you do have to think about that. Fortunately for somebody like me, and I think it's the same for Byron, I don't necessarily have to think about that because I'm just naturally that way, right? Again, I'm a business-minded, right? This is just natural for me. Yes, it's natural. So I don't have to try too hard or not be authentic or fake who I'm being. It's just natural for me.
Nice. Yeah, and that's what came up to and I'm learning too. I just started my LLC. I'm doing the consulting for politics, learning both sides. I might not have a paycheck for a year, but I'm trying to invest, learning all the different stuff that wasn't taught to me in the K through 12. And I went to public university, college. But thank you so much for joining and having this long discussion. I'm going to spread this all over Facebook. Where can people find your campaign and donate?
Yeah, man, you guys can go right to the website at DariusMayfieldForAmerica.com, and that's FOR. As soon as you go to the homepage, you'll see the big red button at the top that says donate, and that's what we're going to need to get on TV by September and really give ourselves a serious chance at winning this race. And you guys can also see me on Twitter at Mr. Mayfield USA, and on Instagram at Darius, the number 4 America. And lastly, you can see me on Facebook at Darius Mayfield for America, and that's FOR.
Thank you so much for joining the NJ First podcast. Make sure everybody to like, subscribe, and share. See you next time.